If there's one particular genre that the Nintendo Switch already has a pretty rich and extensive library of, you could argue that it's that of the fighting game. As well as Nintendo's own Super Smash Bros. And Wii U port Pokken Tournament, there have been 2 Street Fighter releases, both a 2D and a 3D Dragon Ball game, eShop gems such as Pocket Rumble and Shadow Fight 2, and some of the best 2D fighters ever made under the Hamster Neo Geo banner such as King of Fighters, The Last Blade and Samurai Showdown. That's before you mention a couple of crossover fighters such as Blade Strangers and Blazblue Cross Tag Battle 2. Talking of Blazblue, that brings us nicely to the subject of today's review. Superbly written by one of our contributors, Akash, with the game in question being Blazblue Central Fiction. Where does it sit amongst such fierce competition? Well, let's find out. The Blazblue fighting series has been notable for its extensive story ever since the original game's release. The Epic of Ragnar takes place over 4 games, with Central Fiction being the last. The story spans multiple universes, includes time travel, changes to the continuum, and many more literary devices that make the story have a seemingly endless amount of lore and events. I feared that I would fail to understand the plot, considering that I had missed 3 games worth of it, but the game does a decent job of explaining things whilst not bogging down the experience for series veterans at the same time. An optional 30-minute recap is available at the beginning of the story mode, and there are many external sources that can efficiently set the scene for Central Fiction should you want a bit more of the background. The arcade mode also provides an additional layer to the story. In arcade mode, characters fight series of partially randomised, partially event-based battles. These are split into 3 acts, though some characters only have an Act 2 and or 3. This is a story mode for those who care only about the fighting aspect of Blazblue. The ratio of combat to cutscene seems to be catering to those who want an introduction to the cast without the visual novel aspect of the main story. Arcade mode has some events that story mode does not have, and vice versa. It is worth completing both modes since they are all well made, but having 2 options to witness such a large story is definitely appreciated. Having a story with such a grand scope means that there will be many names constantly used with little time to explain each one. Luckily, Central Fiction offers an immense library mode to help improve one's understanding. Characters, families, locations, factions and many other elements of the Blazblue series have thorough entries explaining who or what they are, their history and most importantly their relations with the rest of the cast. I often found myself lost among the many writings of the library, eager to understand the world of Blazblue. The size of the library means that most will never see all it has to offer, but for those who enjoy delving deep into lore, the library is a wonderful feature. I believe that the key to exposition is striking a balance between narration and character dialogue. While the entire story is translated, there is no English voice setting, despite the rest of the series having included this. I don't necessarily dislike the Japanese voices, but character interactions have been lost without any English dub. While a lack of English voices is not a deal breaker, it did prevent me from appreciating the entirety of Central Fiction's characters, and overall, story scores 17 out of 20. Being a fighting game, the main attraction of Central Fiction is of course the combat. Set on a 2D plane, the combatants attempt to deplete the HP of the other, typically in a best of 3 format. Generally, characters can walk or dash forward and backwards, jump from the ground as well as in the air, and perform dashes whilst aerial. Backstepping also allows for shielding, creating an emphasis on stage control. There is a standing and crouching version of said shield, each of which block different types of attacks. The 4 frontal buttons are your primary method of attack, whether used alone or with a control stick input. 3 of the buttons are used in light, medium and heavy attacks, while the 4th is used in the drive system. The drive system includes actions that contribute to each character's unique ability. Some abilities are simple, whilst others are difficult but rewarding to master. Even if one is unable to input directional movements for more complex attacks, these 4 buttons still give them a variety of options. Blazblue is known for being complex, and Central Fiction is no exception. the vast majority of attacks require a directional input through the left joystick in tangent with the aforementioned button presses. These inputs range from simple quarter swivels to complex movements that are challenging to pull off in the heat of combat. This spectrum of accessibility is a recurring theme in Blazblue, as certain characters are easier to master than others. As a result, the complexity of Blazblue is offset by the fact that even the most skilled players will find challenging characters to play with. This accessibility is also improved by stylish mode. This control setup allows for the SP button to be used. This button triggers attacks that would usually be done with a joystick input, but balances it by being a weaker rendition. This is a great system, as it allows for newer fans to enjoy Blazblue without feeling daunted by the many movement inputs. While I opted for the traditional technical mode, stylish mode is a stellar addition nonetheless. It wouldn't be a fighting game without stipulations and meters to keep track of, and Blazblue Central Fiction has 3 main gauges to be aware of: the barrier gauge, the heat gauge and the burst gauge. Barrier blocking is a powerful version of a typical block that prevents chip damage, changes knockback and is usable against more kinds of attacks. Using this block consumes parts of the barrier gauge. Barrier blocking too often will deplete the gauge and cause the player to enter the danger state. In this stage, the player takes additional damage and cannot block. Choosing when to barrier block and how to bait your foe into depleting their gauge is one of the many layers of strategy in Central Fiction and is a personal favourite. The heat gauge slowly increases based on certain actions during the match, going from a minimum of 0 to a maximum of 100. Some attacks use a portion of the heat gauge, so managing the gauge is critical for using deadly combos. The burst gauge passively increases throughout the round, and when full it can be used for 2 actions, overdrive and burst break. In overdrive, many attacks are boosted for a short amount of time, and a few new options are available. While still in hit stun from an attack, burst break creates a shockwave that forces the opponent away. These options consume 70 and 100% of the burst gauge respectively, so they must be used sparingly. If the story has the library to clarify all the jargon thrown around, then the fighting has practice mode. This extensive mode includes dozens of tutorials from general theory to character mechanics, character specific challenges and a training area in which all the rules can be modified to perfectly fit one's need. There are a few other single player modes included in Central Fiction, though I never found them particularly interesting. The aforementioned arcade mode is arguably the best secondary mode, though it isn't very different from simple versus matches. Grim of the Abyss is a surprisingly complex mode in which one obtains grimoires and enhances them with skills earned from battle. Although I never became very invested in it, I enjoyed what I did play of it. Score Attack is exactly as the name would suggest, in which you fight a series of battles in an attempt to earn a high score. And finally there is Speed Star mode. In this mode you must win a certain amount of battles in the allotted time. You gain additional time by completing certain requirements, such as dealing a fatal blow or not being hit for 5 seconds. At the same time you can be penalised for being hit too often or taking too much damage. Blazblue Central Fiction also includes an online mode, though it is put to shame by Cross-Tag Battle's robust lobby system. You can search for a ranked match or create a lobby with friends, as well as customise your player card and settings. Considering that the Switch Blazblue community is smaller than that of the PS4 or the PC, the online is naturally sparsely populated. Luckily the game allows for background matchmaking, so you can play nearly all of the single player content while waiting for matches. I found matches within a few minutes on launch day, though it's hard to tell how the player count will fluctuate. The actual gameplay itself ran well, though there was occasional slowdown. Gameplay receives 19 out of 20. Blazblue has always had great visuals and music, a reputation that Central Fiction does not fail to keep up. Characters are all two-dimensional and pixelated, a trait all the attacks share as well. While pixelated characters are usually hard to animate quick motions of, the majority of Central Fiction's animations are very elegant. The background is full of intricately detailed cities and fields, adding a charm to the game that is impossible to describe. The anime cutscenes are typically well made, and the character models used in the visual novel section of the story are expressive. The electric guitars are once again centre stage. Most themes have a heavy metal feel while still maintaining the elements of the character that they were composed for. Many of the tracks are catchy and I didn't mind listening to them many times in a row. However, I am disappointed by the lack of a jukebox, especially since it is included in the description of the gallery. This presentation is detailed, fluid and helps tie together the great package that is Central Fiction. Visuals score 17 out of 20, whilst audio scores 16 out of 20. Blazblue Central Fiction costs £34.99 or $49.99, and as already mentioned, for this price you receive quite a wealth of options in terms of gameplay modes. With a character cast list of 36, dwarfing cross-tag battles starting 20, and a single player mode that is far superior to its siblings, plus the usual fantastic production values for Blazblue games, you could certainly have a lot of fun with Central Fiction. I do just want to mention that already I've seen this game for about £25 online as a physical copy, so again, as seems to be the case quite often with the eShop, it looks as if the physical version is the way to go. That being said, this is still good value for money in terms of what you are getting, and value scores 18 out of 20. To conclude, I absolutely adored Blazblue Central Fiction. The expansive story is understandable, even to newcomers, humorous and decently written. The complex combat is difficult to learn initially, but is stellar after the daunting start, and the plethora of extra modes truly make the game complete and help create dozens of hours of content. While the online mode isn't very expansive, it does its job at an average level. The occasional issue, like the lack of English voices and a jukebox, are overshadowed by the many great things it offers. Although Blazblue Central Fiction may seem challenging to play, it's one of the best fighting games available for anyone willing to put the hours in. Blazblue Central Fiction receives a SwitchUp score of 87%. Many thanks as always for watching. Thank you very much to Akash for a fantastically written review of this game. Please do let us know below whether you are planning on picking this one up, or which of the available fighters on the Switch is your current favourite. As always, I just want to thank our Patreons for your ongoing support, it's very much appreciated, but a huge thank you to everyone else for watching our videos, as by doing that you are supporting us just as much as well. Take it easy everyone, and until the next one, happy gaming.